to the second part of my session OMEGAMON XE for DB2 Performance Expert on zOS, short OMPE, meets DB2 Artificial Intelligence for zOS, short DB2 CAI. You might have heard in my first session the context and a short introduction to both products. In the second part of this session, I will show you now in live how OMEGAMON Db2 Performance Expert has to be set up and how you can launch Db2 AI for zOS, as well as a short demo what you get back from Db2 CAI system assessment. By the way, I think I do not need to mention that the PE client is an integrated part of the OMP offering. Simple install and setup. Just download from our internet support page and define the host name and port number on which the OMPE data collector started task is listening. After starting the PE client, you will see all your configured Db2 subsystem on the left hand side. You can from here do all what you like, running Db2 commands, looking at threads, statistic details, system parameters, but also any log conflicts. There is also the exception processing. But before we start, we are looking at the properties. What you need to define is just the host name and the port number, and you will get back the information about the Db2 subsystem and in which MVSL part is running. But there's also the Db2 CAI tab, and here you have to define where your Db2 CAI is located, on which server, which SA port it's using and which UI port is using, as well as your user ID and password just to log on to the Db2 CAI. You can monitor all your Db2 subsystems in parallel. So now let's log on to the one Db2 subsystem where you have to define your MVS user ID and password to get authorized to have access to the Db2 information from Db2. So when we come in, we will have first of all overview about the KPIs. There are some data views capability, but also an overview of all your exceptions. If you're logged on to several Db2 subsystems, it will show you all exceptions in all your Db2 subsystems. From here, I can just select one of those and just double click, and it comes up with information about, for example, how is the synchronous number of synchronous reads exceeding my thresholds. As you can see, there are several samplings available, so it was just going over my warning 50 and my problem of 100 synchronous I/O. From here, I can close, I can go and just start the Db2 CAI with a root cause analysis. But before we do this, just have a look into the exception processing itself. So we are going to the tools menu, the exception processing, and from here you see that we have all the exception log and the periodic exception log available. But there's also some threshold sets where we can have just look into one of the threshold sets, and we can look at certain things like here just editing the exception and looking at specific parameters. So when you define a new one or when you wanted to change an existing one, there are different categories for threads, for statistics. For each statistic category, we have different parameters, categories, and for each categories we have different matrix. For those matrix, you can define an operation. You can define a threshold, warning threshold, problem threshold, by total, per commit, per second, per minute, per thread, and you can qualify, for example, in application areas that you wanted to have for the same matrix different thresholds for different kind of workload. Just save at the end your threshold settings, and then we are going to start the processing. As you can see, we have two threshold sets. During the activation of the threshold data set, you are asked to which one should be started. So here you can start and stop the exception processing. Actually, this is already started with one of the threshold. It's running in 30-second sampling interval. there's also the option to reroute any alerts to an user exit. So when we now look at the threshold information, come on, you will see that there are some periodic thresholds still valid. Others have an end date, so they are already finished because the threshold or the warning is no longer valid. But now let's have a look at the SQL statement per systems in detail. We'll right click and look at the history. So what we see over the time, these values were selected, was just collected and checked, and from here I now can run the root cause analysis. It comes up with a window where I can define the on-demand time range where the system assessment should be executed. And going now with the DB2 subsystem with its parameters and with my user ID and password, now I'm going to invoke and to launch the DB2 CAI end user interface. As you can see, there is only one of today available, and it already has the status success. It starts with started, but after it's finished, it comes back with the status success, and then we can zoom in. There are more available, so if you just look into, as you can see, there are some other schedules like done by scheduler, like done by the user ID on demand. So let's just have a look at the today's one. I just double click here and I get now for the different matrix, for the different profiles, for the different perspectives of the system assessment information. So what I can go in and I can click on here to get recommendations just on this DBM1 non-zip ratio, CIFP ratio with recommendations. I can double click to get more information. For each of those, I can go in here and can have a look for the different matrix. So we have just the one major matrix, but we have also some related matrix available just in one view. Let's now check one I was running from yesterday, which shows a problem area. Just have a click on this, and I will find on the second page log write unavailable buffer. Just double click, and as you can see here, we can find, okay, though there's a log write unavailable buffer 13 and the log records created. So this will give you already an information about what's going on in your system and which thresholds you should set up just as a warning or the problem value. There's also the different profiles where you can see what is checked in general. So there we could look at the total get pages per second, for example. Also here it shows you just from this time frame from the assessment was scheduled, just see the matrix just based on those thresholds. When we look at the scheduler, as you can see, there is some training scheduled just to get a baseline, and then there is a weekly, daily schedule. This is just for the periodic scheduling of assessments, but as what we use from the OMP is just on demand, just for a specific time frame. You can also start it from here, where we'll see a similar entry panel where you say what is the starting, what is the end of the period. Okay, with this I just wanted to conclude the live demo and return to the presentation. Here just as a summary, you can see we have the threshold editor. We have the starting of the threshold exception processing, the event exception processing. You see this exception processing window with the log files. And on the next page, it's just showing how this DB2 CAI just get launched from the detail display, exception detail display with using the analyze root cause button. The start window with the start and end date, and then you come to the system assessment and user interface. And with this, I just wanted to thank you.